رحمه الله من قراءة سورة المباركة الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم إلى قيامة يوم الدين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، السلام عليك يا غريب كربلاء. رزقنا الله في الدنيا زيارتكم وشفاعتكم في الدنيا والقبر وفي الآخرة. أما بعد، فقد قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله: حسين مني وأنا من الحسين. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. There's a request for the brothers to come a little bit closer and spread out a little bit more over here. That way, in the lecture, I'm not just looking over here in one side. I have, a little bit of range where I can look back and forth, inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Especially the young ones. You don't need the back support from the bench. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Inshallah, tonight we will be entering our fourth night of discussions. And tonight we will be discussing how Imam al-Hussein alayhi salatu wassalam was supposed to be the intended common unity point for Sunnis and Shias to reunite on. As we know, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is someone that all Muslims agree upon. But it seems one of the meanings from the hadith of Husayn minni wa ana min al-Husayn is that just like you have taken your religion from me, and just like how Husayn is from me, I am also from Husayn. My religion will be revived through Husayn. Everyone and every sect of Islam will be kept alive and revived through Imam al-Hussein. Otherwise, truly, without Imam al-Hussein, no form of Islam would have stayed alive after the actions of Yazid ibn Muawiyah, la'natullah alayh. And therefore, with Imam al-Hussein being such a central figure to both schools of thought, it's very disturbing / confusing when people take Muharram and Ashura to give their own conclusions and to publicly ask questions, especially when they have a following and when they have such a respectable and commendable command over the subject matter where they usually operate within. Tonight, brothers and sisters, we will be, brother, please leave a little bit of the echo on. The ladies, okay, inshallah. Inshallah, the men will have to do a little bit of sacrifice for the women once again. So no problems. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. A second for the love of Imam Hussein. Brothers, I don't know why, but the first night we had a lot more powerful salawat. I think as the nights go by, we're losing our love for Imam Hussein. Let's show about Abdullah, Fatima Zahra, who's right there across that border, that we do have that love and it's getting stronger. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The personality who we will be focusing on tonight, or rather the academic, is someone by the name of Dr. Ali Ataei, who hails from the school of thought of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. And sometime last year around Muharram, he came out with a presentation in which he made some very welcome points and some points that need to be examined a little bit further. Some of which he posed in the form of a question and seemed to imply a conclusion on his own. Others, where he did not even ask a question, he just brought his own conclusion, stating it as if it is indisputable fact. And this deserves a polite reply, an academic reply, a friendly reply. Why? Because truly Dr. Ali Ataei, who is among the faculty of Zaytuna College here in the United States, is someone who is a gem when it comes to his field of study, as I mentioned earlier. And his field of study is analyzing the Hebrew Bible as well as the New Testament in light of the Quran and seeing what we can actually understand from the current Hebrew Bible and New Testament in light of the Quran. Not trying to derive tafsir from there, but rather see where was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala trying to correct their narrative. And so it becomes necessary, of course, if you're going to read the Quran, which is a reply to some of these books and Near Eastern texts, to see what is the baggage that the Jews and Christians came to the table with, and what did they have as an understanding when the Quran came to correct their understanding of personalities who we share. And so in that realm, Dr. Ali Ataei is truly a pioneer and has much to offer. But when he came into this arena, into this field of sacred Muharram and Ashura, from a Sunni perspective, he had a lot of hits and he had a lot of misses. And so while we will not be, unfortunately, able to do justice to the entirety of the lecture and praising what needs to be praised because of the lack of time, we will only be replying to some of the questions that he rose for us. And inshallah, the hope is that brothers and sisters from both schools of thought, from Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, as well as our youth and some of our adults as well, it's fine. If we need a refresher on some of these topics as well, we all walk away with a understanding of at least what is the Shia narrative and why it deserves to be heard and given a chance, and why we indeed think that it is haq. So, without much further ado, I'd like to go straight into some of the points that Dr. Ali Ataei made. There are about 8 or 9 points, so inshallah, bear with me. This is not going to be a technical lecture. This is going to be a very emotionally engaging lecture, especially for those who love the wilayah of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullah wa salamu alayhi, and Imam Hussein, salawatullah wa salamu alayhi. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And so what is that first point? The first point where we have to acknowledge a point that a Sunni author, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, author of the Musnad Ahmad, also one of the leaders of the one of the leaders of the four main schools of jurisprudence of our brothers, Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, is a hadith which says that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam takes the hand, or took the hand of each al-Hasanain, one of Imam al-Hasan, one of Imam al-Hussein, and he raised it up a little bit and said, Man ahabbani wa ahabba hadaini wa ummahuma wa abuhuma kana ma'ya fi darajati yawm al-qiyamah, which means, whoever loves me and loves these two, meaning who? Imam al-Hasan and Imam al-Hussein, as well as their mother, as well as their father. Now this is a Sunni hadith. Remember, this is Musnad Ahmad ibn Hanbal. He will be with me at my position on the day of judgment. That's a bold statement. And that too, not from our books, but from the books of Ahlul Sunnah. But then we find that Dr. Ataei, having given us this very nice insight into Sunni books and given Ahlul Sunnah a very good reason to love Imam al-Hasan and Hussein, says, but we also see something in an attempt to make Shi'as also love the companions. He says that we also have very similar hadith regarding Aisha and Abu Bakr. For example, he narrates from Amr ibn As without citing a reference, which is not a problem. It's common to see hadith like these in their sources, where Amr ibn As comes to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he asks, who is the most beloved of all people to you on earth? And he says, Aisha. And then he says, no, I meant from the men. And he says, Abuha, her father. He says, well, then who? He says, Umar. He says, well, I noticed he didn't mention my name, so at that point I stopped asking. Now, Dr. Ataei is right when he says that the Shia will find a problem with this hadith, but he doesn't really give us much credit. He seems to want to portray us as if we just dismiss whatever we don't like. Why do we reject this hadith, brothers and sisters? Well, for one, look at who the narrator is. Who did I mention that the narrator is? Amr ibn As. Let's look very quickly at who Amr ibn As is. Amr ibn As is someone who Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he notices him and Muawiyah sitting next to each other, says, make sure that whenever you see these two sitting next to each other, you separate the two. Because these two, if they're seen sitting next to each other, are definitely plotting something, and their plots will never be to the benefit of Islam. This is the type of person who we want to take hadith from. They'll say, oh, well, from the perspective of it doesn't praise him, it actually goes against him. While we can take this from biblical studies, when we are dealing with a known liar and a known hater of Ali ibn Abi Talib, then as soon as he says an alif, ba, or ta, we already know this is a lie. There was no question even probably asked to Rasulullah, let alone an answer such as this. So that is the first response. But then we see that after he says, yes, the Shia, they will not accept this, he goes on to say, the facts don't lie. Yeah, Dr. Ali, what are the facts that we have to contend with? He says, Rasulullah is buried in Aisha's house. And buried next to him are Abu Bakr and Umar. And this is definitely a fadila for them. Now, we have two responses over here because there are two claims over here. One is that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was buried. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. الثاني لحب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. The first reply is on this allegation that he was buried in the house of Aisha. There's a third claim as well, that he also died in the lap of Aisha. And we'll quickly touch on this. That this is obviously, we have more sources to support that he actually died in the lap of Amir al-Mu'mineen, the last eyes that he saw in this dunya were Amir al-Mu'mineen's, which beautifully bookends something that happened about 30 years ago, which is what? When Imam Ali alayhi salam was born and he came out of the Kaaba with his mother Fatima bint Asad, he did not open his eyes until he was in the hands, cradling him of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And when he opened his eyes, the first face he saw was Muhammad ibn Abdullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. We're now coming to the points that the good doctor raised for us to take down. What are those points? That he was buried in the house of Aisha. First of all, do you usually call your house your wife's house? No, not really. They'll come back and say, well, there were different hujurat, there were different apartments. And so he died in the apartment that was known for him and Aisha, not the other wives. What is our response to this? We say no. While each and every single one of the wives was given their own hujurat, their own apartment, where Rasulullah actually died in the lap of Imam Ali was a common area. How did this later on in history come to be known as the room of Aisha or the house so-called of Aisha? It's not too hard to analyze that when your father and your friend, who's a co-wife of Rasulullah, her father also gets into the seat of government, that you are able to confiscate whatever you like and give other wives a short end of the stick. This is a common area of the house, not Aisha's. It later became confiscated by Aisha because, of course, her father is the ruler of the time. And so who is going to fight against a governing political party? The second claim over here that we had to address before we move on to his next question / claim is that Abu Bakr and Umar are buried next to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, what is our response to this? Because this is a point that many of our youth have to answer as well in their high schools and colleges, and as some of our adults have to answer in their workplaces. What do we respond? We say, number one of the descendants of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is Imam Ali ibn Musa, and he is buried next to Harun. Are we saying that in any graveyard, whoever is buried there, everyone is now either radiyallahu anhu or everyone is la'natullah alayh? This is calling into question the aim of Allah. That if he is going to be sending down rahmah and barakah to one grave, he can't aim it towards one grave, it's going to spill over into the other graves. That just by being proxy to Rasulullah, now you also have some kind of overflow of rahmah. If that's the case, are you willing to concede that they had nothing good to offer themselves? I don't think that's what you meant to say. So are you sure you want to go down this path? Number two, we don't believe that, I could be buried, Rasulullah could be buried, whoever it is could be buried next to Fir'aun. Are we now going to start saying Fir'aun radiallahu an? Are we going to say Iblis radiallahu an? Hasha lillah, astaghfirullah. No, we need to be smarter than this. Ya Muslimin who are listening to this, please employ your intellect. What kind of argument is this? That just because he's buried next to him in the Masjid of Rasulullah, now he becomes a radiallahu an, that this is a merit for him? How is this not something obvious that when you are in power, you can choose to be buried wherever you want? Is this now something that is against Imam al-Hassan and Imam Hussein? When Imam Hassan is being showered with arrows and he is denied, even if we say that he's not going to be buried next to Rasulullah. Let's say, and for those of you who have been to ziyarah, you know what I'm talking about. When you are hanging on to that dhari of Imam Hussein, don't you see those janazas come through, right? And they are trying to get the barakah next to the grave. Let's say that even Imam al-Hussein is just following the commands of Imam Hassan. I just want the barakah of having my janazah pass by Rasulullah. Then go and bury me next to my mother. Then go and bury me in Baqiyah. Fine, let's take even that argument. The fact that Imam al-Hassan is buried all the way over there in Baqi, that means that he is further away from Rasulullah now because two other people happen to beat him to it? Is this what we call logic? Ya Muslimin who go and do da'wah work, and you appeal to the minds and rationality of Hindus and Christians, because maybe you are fans of the likes of Ahmed Didat or Zakir Naik or Shabir Ali and all of these likes, and you bring rational proofs from the Bible and the Gita and the Upanishads, all of these books. Why is it that when it comes to Al Muhammad, you insist on cognitive dissonance? You don't want to ask a question. You want to turn a blind eye. Are Al Muhammad not worth a second look? I believe that they are. I humbly request that you come and ask even one of our young ones, because they will be able to give you these resources. Now, without taking too much more time on this issue, let us move on because we have a lot to discuss. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. If we can have the mic volume be raised a little bit. Can we have the mic volume raised a little bit? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now, the next point from Dr. Ataei, and remember, we are not condemning him for having these views, for speaking these views. We thank him for coming forward and at least raising some awareness for Ahl Sunnah. Because one of our complaints, shukran, is that when we go to a city where there are no Shia centers and we have to go to a Sunni center for Jum'ah, we will hear 1,000 hadith from Aisha before we hear one from Sayyidah Zahra. We will hear 10,000 from Abu Huraira before we even hear one from Zain al-Abidin or Ja'far al-Sadiq, or even the one who they claim is their fourth Khalifa and they love so much, Ali ibn Abi Talib. Why? Why this injustice? What has Abu Huraira done for your iman that Abu Turab can't do for you? Honestly, please tell me. Is he your Khalifa or is Abu Huraira? It's a simple question. But now, the point is that, in Sunnism, there is a dispute of whether the Mawlid is something to be celebrated or not. Of course, this is not a problem for the Shias. We celebrate 14 Mawlids, we commemorate 14 wafats, shahadas, right? Or 13 when it comes to wafat. We look for a reason to celebrate our personalities. While maybe some of the Sunni brothers and sisters have a problem celebrating even their one ma'soom, if they accept that he's ma'soom. So, he takes this and does qiyas with it. He does some analogical reasoning with it. That just like it's not wajib to celebrate the Mawlid, and you wouldn't do takfir on someone who doesn't celebrate the Mawlid, it's not wajib for a Sunni to go to a center to commemorate Ashura. So if you don't see Sunnis commemorating the tragic demise of Imam Hussein, and it is a tragic demise, he acknowledges that much, that doesn't mean that they don't love Imam Hussein. They love Imam Hussein in other ways. This is his claim. He says that just like how if they don't celebrate the Mawlid, they might study hadith, they might memorize Quran, they might... How does studying hadith and memorizing Quran show your love to Rasulullah? That's just being a basic Muslim, first of all. Second of all, yes, we agree that it is not wajib to attend the majalis of Aba Abdullah. But we will raise this counterpoint, and we will say this in an educational manner, that if the claim is true that you truly love Aba Abdullah, then it becomes natural to want to come and honor him and commemorate him. These presences that I see here before me, that Zahra is counting and she will do shafa'ah for you on Yawm al-Qiyamah, this is a testament of the iman coming from your qulub. You guys all had work. Today is a Monday. And yet you came. Is it wajib on you to come? No. There are those who will say, especially under the guise of COVID, I'll just watch my favorite Maulana online. What they don't understand is there is a separate kind of spirituality that is derived from specifically, physically coming to the center. And that is where we differ with our brothers Ahlul Sunnah. Because we say that love is not just lip service. Love is action. Love is sacrifice. Sacrificing another plan to come and be here. Sacrificing another narrative to honor his narrative. And so we move on quickly to the next point, which is what? That, and by the way, this type of argument that, oh, it's okay, if he doesn't come to the center to commemorate Imam Hussein, that doesn't mean that the lay Sunni brother or sister does not love Imam Hussein. Are we going to use the same arguments that we saw for Saqifa? That, yeah, it's okay if he wasn't there at the funeral of Rasulullah. He still loves him. He just had more important things to do. Are we going to say that we have more important things now than Imam Hussein on Ashura? Is that why we can get away with these types of I love him too arguments? How much longer are we going to let ourselves get away with this? And this is not addressed to the brothers and sisters in front of me. This is addressed to the vast Muslim ummah. This is a call to awaken and to use Imam Hussein as that commonality point and to unite on a point of haqq, not just on some platitude, on haqq. So, the next point is that the Shias claim, and now he starts to get a little bit off topic from Ashura, but it's okay, we'll answer these questions because apparently no one else was there to answer it for him. So, the claim is that the Shia say Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman hated Imam Ali alayhi salam. And Imam, well, if this is true, and I know probably all of you have heard this, but one more time is not going to hurt anybody if we respond. The response that we usually find is, well, if that's true, why are 3 of the sons of Imam Ali named Abu Bakr, Umar, and Uthman? Before we get to the actual response, I want to respond to a subtle point that was made. He says that, and I quote, if he really hated them and they were his mortal enemies, why would he do this? Here, I would like to turn to 2 books which Ahl Sunnah revere as the most authentic after the Quran. What are those books? Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih al-Muslim. Sahih al-Bukhari, the teacher of Muslim ibn Hajjaj, is not who I will quote today. Why? Because Muslim does a little bit more justice when he narrates the hadith than his teacher Bukhari. Bukhari has a known tendency against Ahlul Bayt. So when something comes up that is a little bit problematic for him, he censors it. So you'll see when you go, and I'll give you the web link as well. So all of you who are watching online, I will give you the web link. Open up another tab, go to sunnah.com/muslim/1757C and read along with me. In Arabic, first. And this is a little bit of background. Now, this whole entire hadith does not have to be hujjah on us, but this is enough for us to prove that there was a hatred that Umar even acknowledged. What does Umar say? He says, and this is, by the way, in the book of Jihad and Expeditions, under the chapter of the rulings of Fay. What is Fadak? It is Fay, it is not inheritance. Meaning, under the chapter of Fay, in the book of Jihad and Conquests, Sahih Muslim records this, that Imam Ali alayhi salam and Abbas come to the court of Umar, asking for Fadak. Umar, after a long hadith, and this is referenced in many other places, but they say refer back to over here because it's too long of a hadith. What does Umar say? He says, قال فلما توفي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وأخيك ويطلب هذا ميراث امرأته من أبيها فقال أبو بكر قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم, the Ali is from me, ما نورث ما تركنا صدقة فرأيت ماه كاذبا آثما غادرا خائنا والله يعلم إنه لصادق بار راشد تابع للحق ثم توفي أبو بكر وأنا ولي رسول الله. Who's saying this? This is Umar. I will translate, don't worry. أنا ولي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وآله وسلم وولي أبي بكر فرأيت ماني كاذبا آثما غادرا خائنا والله يعلم إني لصادق بار راشد تابع للحق. And then the hadith continues. This is the only part that's important right now for our discussions, because this is, as we say, proof in the pudding. This is straight from the horse's mouth. What is Umar ibn Khattab saying to Ali ibn Abi Talib and Abbas? Let me translate now. And this is from Sunnah.com. Is this a Sunni or a Shi'i website? A Sunni website. What is being said over here, not by the Maulana on the mimbar from a Shi'i center. This is Sahih Muslim. He says that both of you came to demand your shares from the property left behind from the Rasul. And you demanded your share from the property of your nephew. He's saying to Abbas. He says, so now, when Rasulullah passed away, he demanded a share on behalf of his wife. Who's the wife of Imam Ali alayhi salam? فاطمة الزهراء سيدة النساء العالمين صلوا على محمد. Before we move on with this hadith, one question. For the fair, balanced person. Why is Umar saying that this is inheritance when Bukhari and Muslim have put this, or at least Muslim has put this in the chapter of faith? Why did he put it in the chapter of inheritance then? So which one is it? The consensus from Ahl al-Tashayyu, your brothers in faith, is that we say that this is faith because it was given in the lifetime of Rasulullah. Then after his death, it was confiscated. So he was demanding a share on behalf of his wife from the property of her father. And Abu Bakr said, the Messenger of Allah had said, that we do not have any heirs. We, the prophets, whatever we leave behind is charity. By the way, this hadith is only narrated by Abu Bakr, which is already suspect in itself. No one else narrates this. The daughter herself has never heard this hadith. Moreover, Rasulullah hasn't heard of Dawood and Sulaiman. He hasn't heard of Prophet Yaqub. He hasn't heard of any of these prophets who are leaving behind irth, who are leaving behind inheritance for their children. This is their narrative. But also within their books is this hadith. Let's continue. So both of you thought him, meaning Abu Bakr, to be, Sahih Muslim says, Umar says, you saw him, Abu Bakr, as a liar, as not even a sinful person. Atham means he is drowning and his entire life is encompassed with sin. Meaning my Mawla sees Abu Bakr as an atham and Umar knows this, and it's recorded in Sahih Muslim and it's accessible on the World Wide Web in the year 2022. Let's continue. Someone who is entrenched in sin, someone who is treacherous, and someone who is dishonest. This is the translation of Sunnah.com, not myself. I would probably translate it a little bit differently, but it's okay. And Allah knows. Now this is Umar coming to the rescue of his friend. And Allah knows that he was true and virtuous and well-guided and a follower of truth. Then when Abu Bakr passed, I became the successor of Rasulullah and the successor of Abu Bakr. And then you both, who's you both? Imam Ali and Abbas. You both saw me, Umar ibn Khattab, as a liar, as a person buried in sin and a person who is treacherous and dishonest, and Allah knows that I am true, virtuous, well-guided, and a follower of truth. My question is simple. My question is very simple. I promise. You claim that Imam Ali alayhi salam does not hate Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman. Fine, I will grant you that. Imam Ali alayhi salam is high above such feelings of hatred. Imam Ali alayhi salam does not even need to waste his emotions on such people. But can we at least say that the representative of Allah after Rasulullah, who was announced at Ghadir, as we proved 3 nights ago at the event of Ghadir, which is mutawatir on your sources, says that both of these shaykhain are liars, entrenched in sin, treacherous, liars, guilty, all of these things. Can we at least admit that your books say that? Because how much more are we going to hide, brothers and sisters? At least go and read your books. For the sake of, you think that we, the Shias, are doing taqiyya, although I don't really have much to do taqiyya of. I'm proud of my beliefs. I stand up for my beliefs. But let's say that you don't think that my sources are truthful. Maybe you think that my narrators are liars and treacherous, and okay, well, let's go to Sahih and Muslim. And let's see what because he's your